this!
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
It jumped up a notch.
It did, didn't it?
Disgaea 5 Alliance of Vengeance is a tactical role-playing game where you play as the demon overlord Disgaea on his quest to obtain nondescript revenge against someone with an even stupider name than his own, which I scarcely thought possible. Now, if you're sat there thinking, that doesn't really sound all that enticing, you would not be in the minority, but hear me out. Disgaea is a series of games that has been on the gaming scene for over a decade, but remains in the margins of the turn-based strategy genre due to the overall silly and edgy storyline, and because this game is pretty mechanically intense, with each game in the series featuring a minimum of 200 hours of gameplay required for you to even say you finished most of the game. The majority of people who play these sorts of strategy games have at least heard of Disgaea, but a large number of people haven't played it. I asked some of my friends why, and for the most part I get answers like, "It doesn't look like my kind of game," or "I don't really have the time to jump into a game series with over 5 games," and in the case of one friend in particular,
I've seen gameplay of it. There just appears to be way too much going on.
Say words to me.
Hi Jackson, I'm doing the recording.
this person's assessment of the game wasn't wrong exactly, and I jumped forward to defend it, but then I realized, holy you're right, this game is really involved. To someone who isn't insane and hasn't been playing these games for the better part of a decade, it can seem really difficult. The difficulty of this is only enhanced when you consider just how much there really is to it, especially in the 5th installment. You have all the different kinds of equipment, all the different kinds of characters,
there's fists,
subclass
swords,
systems, multiple different kinds
bows,
of
guns,
guns, axes,
carol
stabs,
worlds,
there's
there's
overload
overload
skills,
skills,
then you get into
different
groups,
dark
and
assembly,
incredible
skills,
skills,
things,
it's a
there's
big
weapons,
pain,
you
you
gotta
gotta
keep
track
track
of.
of.
Stop it! Alright, so with the 50 plus things you need to keep track of in this game, how could anyone possibly understand all of it? Well, the answer is simple. It's all in your brain. Australian psychologist John Sweller put forth the idea that human beings can only learn so much and remember so much information at any given time, the load of their cognizant mind, thus cognitive load theory. Cognitive load theory postulates that human brains only have so much information they can store and remember, but what they store and remember can be made easier if they recognize certain bits of information. Gregory L. Murphy and Jack Z. Wright wrote on the topic of cognitive load theory in regards to experts with a lot of knowledge and people with just regular basic knowledge, and Disgaea 5 expands upon this idea through its gameplay. The game offers a wide array of different systems, but over the course of your incredibly long playtime, the concepts and systems will be introduced to you in incredibly smart and simple ways. With entire stages devoted to the base mechanics to give you the basic understanding and ways to easily and intuitively figure out the non-basic stuff, Disgaea 5 is one of the most accessible games in the series to date. The reason for this accessibility is due to the establishment of basic knowledge so quickly and concisely, and because advances in technology allow them to put more tutorial in the game without wasting more potential for advanced things. With the knowledge of how the game works in mind, the player can start to build upon what they know, and the game builds upon its own systems through the chapters of the base game. They introduce mechanics in a slow, gradual way. You learn about item levels as a requirement to move on, you learn about the basics of elemental resistances through trial and error, and learn about weapon ranks through natural gameplay. More or less throughout the whole of the base game, there's no real need to go beyond what you're explicitly taught. The only base mechanics will be necessary. But in time, Disgaea 5 introduces where the quote-unquote real game begins, the Carnage Dimension. The Carnage Dimension is essentially hard mode. The game takes all the same levels as before, but changes just about everything. The enemies have higher stats and levels, better equipment, and more abilities they otherwise wouldn't have. This downright requires the player to utilize the more experienced game mechanics, such as power leveling and stat manipulation, if they want to stand a ghost of a chance. To prove my point, this is just one of the Carnage Dimension maps. And not the last one, but one in the middle. Just look at all the enemies at level 9,999. Go ahead, I'll wait.
No! God! No! God, please, no! 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 No!
player is given motivation to complete maps like this through the story, but the primary motivation is essentially bragging rights. To claim that you've finished it, that you've beat the Carnage Dimension, to show off that fancy platinum PlayStation trophy for dealing over 80 billion damage or whatever. But the game doesn't make this a slog. It makes this exhilarating. And even better is the way they use the expansion of basic knowledge into expert level knowledge. See, we tied it all back there. But how you learn to play the game is only part of the game. The other part of the game is, playing the game. And how does the game play? It's amazing! With literally double the number of unique units that you control and maps that can feature upwards of 200 enemies at a time, all at varying levels and strengths with different, aspects brought into it from previous games that weren't other ones, and it's just an amalgam of fantastic game design and fantastic ugh. Alright. But if the game is so fantastic, then why is it so inaccessible in the opinions of so many people? It might be because they learn differently. David A. Kolb theorized about the way that different people learn in his theory of experiential learning. Experiential learning detailed the different kinds of learners there are: accommodators, divergers, assimilators, and convergers, based around the 4 aspects of cyclical learning. In video games, this can be applied as well. Same principles apply to the players of games as the learning processes of how you play. Disgaea 5 is a game that emphasizes divergers and convergers. The game is much easier to approach if you come at it from an angle of observation, where you look at the map and the stats and abilities of each enemy character who is placed on it. Alternatively, if you know your own characters better than how enemy characters work, you can formulate a plan on how to tackle every different map. Being an assimilator is more doing something in theory. You can just think about what you might be doing, you won't actually do it, and you won't ever get to playing the game. And if you're an accommodator and you rush in without planning, you're likely to wind up like this. However, the idea of different learning types is only part of the experiential learning theory, and it has been expanded upon by Jennifer Moon. Moon explained that people can enter a phase of increased learning where they have the intention to learn, and Disgaea 5 does a great job of giving you a reason why you would want to learn more. Simply put, because cooler things happen the more you learn. The better your stats and equipment, the cooler your attacks become. It's the difference between this and this.
Ultimate demon technique! Ultimate skill! Macrocosm!
Moon's theory, when expanded upon, was broken down into a 3-step system. Step 1, a reflective learning phase. Step 2, a phase of learning resulting from actions. And Step 3, a further phase of learning from feedback. These 3 phases can be translated directly into gameplay segments. The reflective learning phase is the first attempt at a battle. The game gives you an estimation of how much damage you'll deal and how likely you are to hit your attack. This allows you to reflect on your action before it happens, taking on only a few of the overall factors. Next, the phase of learning is simply watching your attack unfold. Did you hit? Did you miss? How much damage did you deal? With this in mind, you move on instinctively to the 3rd phase, taking the feedback, total damage dealt, and using it in, future decisions while playing the game, more than likely during the rest of the particular battle you were in. Taking all these learning theories into account, you can see why Disgaea 5 has such a cult following of people who were willing to give it a try, despite how inaccessible it seems on the surface. How many people looked at the game and said, "I think I get it," because the game excels at teaching its players how to play it, and rewards them. It rewards them with some of the most satisfying strategy RPG nonsense imaginable. And luckily for you, the game is more accessible to people without fancy consoles. Here's a shameless plug. Recently, as in like a week before I started this video, Disgaea PC Edition came out. A port of the very first game with the simplest systems brought onto the PC for a reasonable price. If this sort of game looks enjoyable to you, then I'd highly recommend you check it out. And if you like it, work your way up through the different games. Maybe even play one of the spin-offs if the main series games aren't your thing. But if you do decide to try this game series out, I sincerely hope you keep your eye out for the masterful design beneath all the quirky characters and ridiculous levels of hyperviolence. Because you'd be surprised at how intelligent a game that features Horsewiener as the punchline of a joke can be. That's it. Thanks for watching.